to get up here today and tell us why states should produce pornography. Woohoo!
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Here is the Prime Minister speaking. This House believes that states should produce pornography. According to famous periods in psychological areas that stating that sexual desire, the needs for food, the health conditions, etc., are the basic needs of human. So let's pay attention to sexual desire is one of them. So, and next, what is pornography? Let's see the definition. Is that it refers to some words, including the movies, books, and so on, which can cause sexual excitement by some kind of naked pictures or some sexual acts, and which we can see that the pornography, to an extent, can satisfy people's sexual desire. And now, however, we'll set some restrictions to this promotion. First, we will set up several levels for the pornography, and the people we target must be those who are above 18 years old. And we also will impose a stronger punishment for the pirates. Why we do so? The reason is simple, that we pretend those who are under 18 years old, protect those who are under 18 years old. By doing so, we can prevent those, especially for children who didn't have the control or the rational thoughts about sexual acts, although they will, to an extent, have that kind of sexual desire. So this free restriction is to safeguard their to keep them from imitating and safeguard their their behaviors. And also, the next sub-policy for this is that we will post the body examination for the actors and actresses to ensure their provide a qualified health. By doing so, we can in a way to reduce the rate of some sexual diseases happening. And by these measures, both for the consumers, the target people, and also those who in the process of manufacturing this pornography, we believe that our promotion can not only satisfy people's sexual desire, meanwhile safeguard people's basic health condition and teenagers. And make analogy. Yes.
In your speeches, you have mentioned that to satisfy a personal need, a sexual need. But in my opinion, I think that the personal need can be met in the daily life. Why we should want this kind of thing? So how to explain?
In modern society, for most countries, I mean, that's in terms from perspective of marriage, that is one-to-one marriage, and the marriage also include the meaning that you can have sexual relationship, but that's only for one person. But there are many cases that why people still go out find the prostitution, and that will in a way reflects that people's sexual desire are stronger, and they will one person, and on the other hand, if you think from this perspective, if people are looking for a person to satisfy their needs, then will become the prostitution, or that the prostitution or some illegal sexual acts will happen more. So basically, just make analogies. Our government promotes this like what cigarettes now has been implementing, that we produce cigarettes while we have some restriction in it, so people can, although the cigarette will have some, of course, the negative effects for people's health, but some who they still can eat them, but still can smoke. That means that it satisfies a group of people while not so much harm their health with the restriction. And for the public, with the restriction, we will not harm those who like teenagers and children, etc. So therefore, this House believes states should produce pornography. So thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that speech. You okay? Good. Before I invite the next speaker, public service announcements. Encourage people to ask lots of points of information. Okay? Points of information make you healthy and strong. We now invite first speaker from opposition, the leader of opposition. Woohoo!
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, we recognize that sex is important. Sex is the major drive for every human being to obtain the very enjoyable, fruitful, and lovely life. We agree that, but we think that this should only be limited to the private sector, who to decide whether or not what kind of sexual expression should be given out to the public. And we think that the state, as a neutral role, shouldn't be intervene and take roles and take side to decide what kind of value or what kind of sexual expression should be promoted to the general in the first case. So before I go on with my arguments, first I want to give the two rebuttals to the government side. They come up and tell us that, well, see, here we think that there are problems in the market system, that minority engage in this kind of porn production. So if we want to tackle it, state shouldn't be the one to produce pornography. Just increase just make regulation, make implementation to stop minors to get involved in pornography and being exploited. In addition to that is that, well, they think porn is a good way for promoting sexual education. Well, we think that it was very dangerous to use state to produce porn to use it as a sexual education, because we noticed that the nature of porn is very stimulating. You see all these visual pictures, the sounds, and all those things. It might create more of desire and irrational impulse that somehow it will devalue the meanings of good sex, safe protect sex, and all these kind of things. So we don't think that using the state to produce porn is a good way to promote a good value of sex. And then here comes to my first argument for today's debate is to ask the question about what the role the government should take. So first, we think the harm of the policy is that it takes a biased perspective to tell you about what is the certain value that the society should value and should be adopted. And we think that's extraordinarily harmful because it was a kind of oppression to the minority. Right now, we think the status quo is fine because, especially when this kind of pornography is about private interaction between the parties as well. We think it's totally okay for them and for the market demand and supply to decide what kind of sexual expressions in this porn should be given out and should be produced. And we don't think the state should intervene in it and make a value judgment to tell the people about what kind of sex is ultimately why. Yes.
But the trend in porn has been extremely unhealthy. We see snuff porn that depict rape and all this. Don't you think government has a role to play to debunk and to recreate porn to make it more accessible to people?
Well, I agree with your point saying that right now in the markets there are pornography that was unhealthy, that was kind of controversial as well. Yet the role of the state is not the one to produce porn, but to encourage this company to promote a better way to accommodate some kind of value or safe sex, not the government to be the active one to produce porn. In addition, if you want to tackle this problem about the rape cases in porn or animal sex in porn, the most nice ways to do it is through education or through some kind of public promotions or programs to try to educate the public about what is it nice to be do in sex and in porn. But we do think that the nature of the porn is so stimulant in this sense it creates this kind of irrationality. When people try to read it, they could not able to get a nice message about it because they just want to sacrifice their own desires. So in this sense, we think it was a very dangerous night for the government to take an active role in it. Yes.
So you think when people are having sex, they should not have high amounts of desire and they should be a control freak?
No, I think they should, and they should definitely enjoy it. But I don't think it was the government who is the one to make this kind of like stimulation for the people, because the danger of this policy is that the government is take a role to define what is good for the people or what is nice for the people. It might be against what the majority might feel about it, because the state should act as a neutral one. What about the religious group reaction to this? They would be really offended by what the state was doing. When it was in the status quo, it was the market who was through market system who drive and define how this porn should work, what the direction should go, and no one can intervene about it because it was just the nature of how it would be. But when the state intervened and tried to make an active act on it, we think the state had degraded itself into a porn that it takes sides and promotes certain type of value which might be harmful to the minority, which I will explain in the later argument. We especially need to tell you that sex is something that was private and state should stay objective in this sense. And then the second argument is that the state shouldn't take it in this position is that they are using the taxpayers' money. When taxpayers' money is used, they should be responsible for the investment in the investment and the outcomes. When you are telling me about the state should produce porn, so there is some goal and value that the state wants to achieve, and there should be some benefit in it that can benefit the citizens as a whole. But here I tell you about the harming thing because it will oppress the minority in a sense, because it will decrease the expression of different type of sexual intercourse style, and in addition it will promote certain types of value that is kind of like controversial to the public. So we don't think the state is responsible in this sense to produce porn. And in addition, is that when the taxpayers' money is used, it was used in education or used in healthcare that can serve the public interest. But I want to hear from the government side as well. What is the goal, or what is the tangible or even intangible benefit that the citizen as a whole can actually benefit when the state produce porn? And the next one is about the problem of porn is that it was objectification to women, which later my second speaker, which I will come up again and tell you more about what is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very informative speech. We now invite the second speaker of the opening government team, Deputy Prime Minister.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, before I go to give my give my arguments, I want to give some of my rebuttals to the leader of the opposition. That she said that the taxpayers' money is used to by the state to produce this porns, and then these porns they are waste the taxpayers' money, and the state they are not doing the right thing with this money to provide education and more better welfare to the society. Actually, the things is not that, because that we produce pornography videos and publicity to people, because that people they have we at first we are educated people, the sexual education, and on the other hand,
Voice madam.
sorry, and on the other hand, that there is a very big market in this pornography making, and later I will elaborate it. And the second rebuttal is that she mentioned about the minority and the religious group. They were protest against this sexual spread publicity, and maybe they were done something bad to the society. Actually, that the minority they should their interests should be considered a bit after the majority's the benefits, and besides the minority, the religious people, they are a special group. They can try to avoid to go to the cinema to see this porn videos. No one forced them to go to see that. So it depends on them how whether to see it or not. So it won't be a problem to this minority. And here comes my mainly two arguments. The first argument is that we have to see that there is a very big market in producing this pornography videos and publicity. As we can see that Japan is a very successful example. Japan's video is even illegally widespread to all China and Chinese people. Why do they try to get access to these videos? Because there is so much there is a great need in our country. People want to see how this sexual intercourse and it is, and how can they make to
Voice madam.
increase the happiness when people are acting sexual intercourse. And so as we can see that Japanese their company, their entertainment companies and press, they have earned a lot of money from press from produce these videos and selling these publicities. There is a large market there, and they're earning money, and the state is getting money from these cooperations. And also there are people they're actors, they can become famous by acting in these videos. So this benefit is so big that we cannot see them and just ban producing them by the so-called some not so good reasons. Okay, what's the point?
I think your phenomenon of China is the kind of thing. The China's sexual education is not completed by the government. I think the government's role is to produce the legal or to.
Oh, okay. I get what you say.
It's not
I get
about to
sit down.
satisfy the person's needs.
No, it's the examples when the children young teenagers they don't have it, they don't receive enough education, and when they grow up maybe they maybe some young girls they get raped and they didn't even know what's going on something like this one. Okay, here comes to my oh my gosh. The second argument, pay attention. The second argument is that, as I mentioned before, there is so many illegal spread of the Japan porns to our country. So that in those videos there was something like drugs and violence that is included in those videos, and our government cannot control this unlicensed videos in spreading in our country, and those bad things like violence and drugs, they will affect people's value and promote people to commit crimes. So now we make it legal. Our government ourselves produce it. We provide you these videos, and when we provide it, we have a control ourselves. We know how to make these porns more accessible and more and more educational and sometimes more entertainment to the watchers in our country, and by this end our country is sometimes is kind of make this market more clear, not by those underground, and we can make more laws in defeating those unlicensing and copyrights, and to prevent those videos from Japan. Okay, and so from the two arguments about I strongly oppose to this.
Can I ask you the pen, please? Yeah. Thank you. Ink is finished. Thank you very much for that speech. I can see you're very passionate about it.
Excited to defend.
The Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
So interestingly, we hear from the government side saying that, wow, porn has big profit and big money is like coming out, and then they can benefit the people. Yes, drug has big profit as well. Arms have big profits as well. But somehow we think that these are immoral things, that are illegal things, that are things that harm the people. So we don't allow the state would not be the one who participate and try to gain money in order to trade off this kind of important values to promote a healthy and a civilized society, right? And then the second thing is they talks about, well, the state produce porn. You just give an additional choice for the consumer to pick what kind of porns they want, and then it's still okay for them, right? But the thing is, the state are responsible for its own words and own message sending to the society. The people in the state, the people in the society, they are looking up to the government and to decide certain types of value which guide their life. The state promote that education can lead you to a better life, better career. Then people go on and work hard in their studies. The state promote that if you are good to your parents, then you can have a happy family. people do it as well. These are the values that the state want to enforce. But now, when we are talking about porn, when state is promoting some types of value that might be discriminative to the minority, that was the one that we don't want its existence in the just world. So here comes with my first arguments about why pornography produced by state was so bad. Here we come up from the closing government to ask us about well, in the market there are lots of porns that are conventional. They are rape theme, they have animal sex theme. So why the state shouldn't be coming out and produce a very nice and moral theme about what a porn should be? Well, we think that in the status right now, there was existing beneficial values from this kind of controversial theme. It raised people's attention. It creates discourse. When people think that this kind of value was not good, this kind of value was not safe and not healthy for the people, they will try to discuss it and see and have further discourse, further discussion. They will see what is ultimately good for the people. And it was the decision of the people, not the state who was the one who enforced this value.
Exactly. By state producing this kind of porn and challenging the values that are already on the market, that will create discourse. Currently, the market is not creating the necessary discourse because the government is not challenging those values.
Well, challenging those values doesn't mean that the government needs to produce this kind of porn. Challenging can have different sources and different ideas. If the government wants to challenge people for bad use of drugs, the government would not be the one who authorize and produce drugs and offer people this kind of marijuana and this kind of hard drug. Government will use education, will use public funding to support people, not to engage in this kind of irrational acts, right? And we are seeing that, yes, this kind of fantasy and irrational desire about rape theme and animal sex cannot be reduced, eradicated. But we think that the states right now, they have the existing check and balance, and the government shouldn't intervene in this private system and try to make a say in it. And then the first argument that I come up with today, the second speech, is that porn is a kind of objectification to women. Here we notice that porn dominantly, the consumer are the male. They think that when the males who watch porn, they get excited, they get to see this lovely lady who screams and talks about sex and all these things. And we think that this kind of value shouldn't be promoted and enhanced by the government itself. We notice that objectification of women is everywhere in the society, but we want to limit the harm of this kind of objectification, and especially we don't want the government to be the active role to objectify and harm women. In this sense, we don't want the government to indirectly legitimate and empower this kind of gender inequality, and that's the thing that we don't want to see. Yes.
Don't you think the best way for the government to remove objectification of women is to challenge the objectification of women that is currently in the current porn by producing porn that promotes a different form of value?
Exact value. So for challenging doesn't necessarily mean that you need to produce porn. Well, I concede your idea about, well, the government just go to the ground and play with them and tell them that, well, this is the nice way to enjoy sex by producing a certain type of porn. Actually, women can enjoy sex as well. But we think that when porn, this kind of thing is so stimulative, and it cannot send that correct message in it. When you want to produce some message that is concrete, that is long lasting, it's not only porn that can help you, but other things that can help you. The public discourse can help you. The public discussion can help. The public education can help you. The program about sexual education in the government can help you. Increased women's rights can help you. Help all this kind of thing. Not necessary for the government to take an active role to produce porn. And then the second argument I want to talk about. Yeah, sure.
You mean that the government can provide some program related to sexual education, but what about the human sexual excitement? Can this program, sexual education program, satisfy humans' sexual excitement?
Well, human sexual excitement and desire come out naturally when a baby is born. So we don't think that we need to specially initiate, but it's about romantic love and the hormones created within the one body which create this kind of sexual desire, but not the government who actively want to initiate it. Okay, yeah, the last things about why is it so bad for the government to do so? First, I tell you about the government shouldn't have the role to take a side about what is right and what is wrong. It should leave to the market and the private sector, the private party to involve it. And the second thing is that it would harm the religious group. It will make the religious group get so offensive that it will create protests and it will create certain type of unrest within the society, which can eventually marginalize those people that you want to protect and those people who are in a disadvantaged state in the society. And the third thing is how porn can objectify women, and we don't think the government should at the state at the role to do that. So for all this, we oppose.
Thank you very much for that speech. We now invite the first speaker from closing government.
It's been a year since I debated. Okay.
Porn expert.
Mr. Speaker, side closing government agree that government should promote certain values. Government should reverse the effects of women objectification in the current porn industry. The government should keep education ongoing. The current misconception coming from opposition with regards to education and government's role in education stems from the idea that education stops after school. We believe the education continues further, and the government should keep engaging the public in communicating with them values in which they should consider, which also promotes more discourse and allows people to make better decisions about their sexual lives. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the reason why government should be the ones producing and not like this simplistic reply to everything we say that the opening opposition says that, oh, government don't really have to produce it because the government can promote it and I don't know what else the government can do. But we will tell you that in debunking myths, ladies and gentlemen, she conceded that there is objectification of women happening currently in these industries, which means that the demand and supply, which she says will self-correct, has been failing, and she herself conceded that this objectification currently happens, which means that the demand and supply currently is unhealthy, is distorted, particularly probably because the current trends in porn, ladies and gentlemen, is extremely pro-men. It's extremely, 94% of men are the ones who demand pornographic material, which means that the kind of porn that is produced is mainly objectifies women in a particular way that sides with men a lot more than women. That's why women can't really access porn. That's why women not that much women really watch porn, because they can't relate to the kind of hardcore action that this kind of pornographic material, the kind of artistic ejaculation that stains their faces and make them look like objects, ladies and gentlemen, are those areas which demand and supply has failed to correct. The government, on the other hand, is not dependent on revenues. Of course, the kind of porn and the kind of values that the government promote may not be profitable at first, but because, ladies and gentlemen, that we believe that the change and the saturating of the market with different sorts of porn will include more people within the watching of porn, will also help with the education process, and will also help the discourse in reversing the effects of women objectification. One clear way how this could happen is that if government starts producing porn that are more friendly to women, which means that it allows women empowerment to be promoted within sexual acts, ladies and gentlemen, the fact that it could has the potential to increase the amount of demand or the amount of viewership from women, which then will lead to also when men and women watch porn together, Mr. Speaker, sir, women have more say into what kind of porn should their boys be watching too, because now it's enjoyable for both of them to watch it, and the education in which it creates is also healthier because they share something much more similar. Yeah.
So we see that in the States right now, with the advance of women's rights, there are lots of women group association who try to promote the idea about women should enjoy sex, and they can be the one who will actually produce porn that women enjoy sex.
Good, let them produce those kind of porn, but government does not only look at women. Madam Leader of Opposition, the government look at a wide spectrum of society. For other examples, ladies and gentlemen, it's like the entry point of porn. I'll take you in a minute, yeah? The entry point of porn. Much exploitation happen at the entry level of porn. A lot of women who are poor and desperate get into porn industries and they get exploited by these porn industries. A lot of fat women get rejected, for example. A lot of ugly women get rejected. Because the government is not extremely dependent on the revenues it creates, the government can open up room for these sorts of individuals to get into the porn, ladies and gentlemen. And that's why when governments produce this sort of porn, the government can include these sorts of, make it even more inclusive, because they're not solely dependent on the revenues that they create. Which means that the government have more ability and power to debunk the harmful effects of porn by recharacterizing the conceptions that we have in porn. Other examples to recorrect these perceptions are things like the unfair expectation that men put on women with regards to their flexibility, the way they can, do things which we expect them to do. Therefore, we believe that this sorts of unhealthy behavior could also be corrected by saturating the market, ladies and gentlemen, by creating more different angles of porn. We believe that the discourse would also create a more healthy choice for all individuals within society. Yes.
In your speech, you have mentioned that the government has more ability to produce both that kind of thing, both suitable for maybe the man and male or the females. But I think the independent companies can do the same. The situation right now is not. The motion today is not debated whether or not the government has more ability to produce this kind of thing. But the motion today is whether or not the state or the government has the right.
The debate today is about, yes, private companies can produce, but they're not producing. That's where the debate is. They're not producing because the demand and supply, which you have been defending, have not been working to debunk the myth, the conceptions and the characterizations that we currently have towards porn, and also the objectification of women and the effects towards women, ladies and gentlemen. Only the government can correct this, because the government does not have a financial incentive. The government have an incentive to protect society, and therefore it will be more inclusive. Other aspects, ladies and gentlemen, we also believe that the trend in porn has also led to, has left out a lot of cultural sentiments of porn. Like, for example, how Muslims should have sex, how Christians should have sex, how Jews should have sex. We believe that all these sorts of different situations needs to be introduced within that market as well, so that the private category and the porn isn't monopolized by unhealthy porn that continuously objectifies women and exploit women and remove accessibility from other people who could just as well contribute to great artistic expressions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that uplifting speech. We now invite the Member of Opposition.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. And I'm glad to see today that everyone is very excited about this sexy motion, right? And well, let's get sexy. It's okay, but we cannot. The government side tell us the sex desire is very strong. Of the most people's sex desire is very strong, and it caused the large demand of the pornography, right? We think it's okay, but we cannot because of the great demand, and then we need to produce this pornography because the drones are also the people are also need a large amount of the drones, right? But absolutely, the drones are harmful to our body and harmful to the society and even the whole world, right? So we cannot produce one thing depend on its large amount demand. And second rebuttal is that the government side tells us that people have the freedom of choice to choose whether we want to enjoy the pornography. Well, your freedom is okay, but how about this is harmful to our society? And I would like to explain it in detail later in my argument. And the last one is I will also explain it in my argument. That's why the government is the only one to create this pornography, and I support that the government is also the only one part to stop this production. And here comes to my first argument. And in today's debate, I never heard about from the government that who would you like to give the production to? So you want to give this production to the government's department or the company? If you give this work to the government department, well, okay, let me see what will happen. First, with the development of the technology, and the government would like to produce the high quality production and the very excited pornography. Maybe you will think it can strongly strengthen the people's sex idea, sex desire, but they will yes, and they will also trick it like the produce the movie and to take a lot consideration to cut it, to add a special effect. But what will the people think? The people will think, well, the government's worker, they enjoy the air conditioner in the office and just to enjoy the sex movies. Oh my God! So we need to care the people's emotion, right? We cannot use the people's tax money to set it as the salary for the government's workers to produce those kind of things, right? No thanks. And the second is that we give it to the company, right? And the company's worker also have the money desire when we have the sex desire, right? So they will have spent no effort to produce those kind of things, and they wanted to attract more audience. So they will add some violence or some horrible things, and we can imagine more horrible things, right? So here the society will be not stable because some criminal will try this in the normal life, and it will enhance the people, and the people will think that it's unsafe in the normal life. So up to those points, I really lead to the government to think about who you want to give this production to, the government or the company. But it is both the wrong, right? And the second is that the government is the only powered part to ban the production. And like the closing governments, the first speaker told us, there is because no one would, because no private, because the state code now is 5 from our opening opposition, and state code is 5 now. That's because we not allow the private company to produce the pornography, and so the government here, we needed to ban the production because the government is just the only one, because the private company will because they only care the profit, right? They have no responsibility to care what will happen after the people enjoy this movie, enjoy this film. The company have no responsibility. What they care about is the profit, but this is their nature, and we cannot blame the criminal rates raising up or something else to the communist production, right? So the government here needed to use the stronger power to ban this production, to protect people, to prevent people from the potential harm. So what's your point?
Madam, we don't think that the current porn is the one that is adding violence to create the demand, but the government don't need to create the demand because it's not dependent on the revenue from this production.
But we can see from the but we know that I get the information from the government side is that because the demand of the product, because the great demand, it can bring the economic benefit. So the government choose to get the profit from this great demand, but place the society's happiness away. We think it is not a good way that the government should do, because the government's role here, you need to guide the people. You need to encourage people to the right sexy life, right? And so the government here is we need to guide the people to the sex life, to promote our society, to bring the more nude baby. So I'm glad to oppose.
We now invite the final speaker on the government bench to make the closing whip speech.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it's been a long time since the private corporations produced porn with whips in it. And I think it's about time that government now produce one with whips in it. I was just making a joke of me being a whip. Didn't really work out. Ladies and gentlemen, I have 3 questions to answer before I get into what was the extension coming from closing government. The first is from closing opposition. Her concern was about who is going to produce this porn. Is it going to be the government or is it going to be private corporation? We think it doesn't matter because her problem about it was perception of government workers watching porn in the office and in the aircon. We think that's easily removable by ensuring that this porn is produced in a separate place, right? And that's easily, yeah, please clarify.
Your speech, the last speeches you have mentioned about the types of the maybe the pornography, but I think I use the supply as a demand and supply. If they have the demand, they'll have the supply. If they have supply, I think no matter who produces it, I think this kind of the movies can steer success.
Okay, but sometimes some people don't know that they want to watch this because they've never been exposed to this kind of things, or their initial exposure to the current porn that they've watched disgusts them so much that it turned them off. But when the government is producing a porn that promotes a different value, they might want to start watching it again and reconsider their position on the kind of porn that is created. That's when I was talking about creating a new market base that enters the discourse of pornography, which is currently not in. Women are not saying enough because they're not watching the porn. They get turned off quite easily, and 94% of men is making the call about what kind of porn should be produced, what kind of porn should be demanded, and how women should be objectified. We think reversing these values, ladies and gentlemen, by an agent that is not dependent on the sales of those pornography, is able to saturate the market with different sorts of porn, which will inevitably lead to the access that people have towards a greater, wider coverage of porn. Because the way porn is published online as well is that you don't really know what's going to happen in that porn video until you actually watch it. So saturating the market with lots of government porn would mean that inevitably this pornographic material will be watched and the discourse will take place and the change may occur. and the government engages the people continuously and get people to talk about this particular issue for a longer period of time, rather than closing down the issue and saying 94% of men can dictate how women should be treated and objectified in society. Yeah.
In your speeches, I heard that you want the government to produce a new kind of types of the maybe the kind of movies, but I think this kind of thing can really function as a temptation to the majority. I think the government have no right to do this.
No, temptation for sex is no problem because everyone agreed that sex is a fundamental human right. So if you have a sexual desire, good for you. Finally, I want to discuss this idea of whether or not there is this economic benefit. Right? I think there's some clarification needed. Yes, it's true that opening government said that there is some form of economic benefit to the government engaging within or entering into this market. I talked to you about how saturating the market can create some form of revenue and economic benefit here. But I also told you from my member's speech that there is a long-term plan to this particular idea. In the short term, maybe some women who did not some actors or some kind of porn that previously did not gain access within the current market demand and supply structure will now start getting in. And initially, maybe not that many people watching. But as these videos increase, as the market gets saturated and flooded by more government productions, then we believe that in the long term, it changes the market of pornography, who watches it, the discourse that occurs also changes over time. So this is a long-term objective, to see how the market of pornography can evolve over the kind of productions that we produce. Final POI, I took 2 from you guys, I'll take 1 from the book.
Thank you. So, do you mean that when government produce porn by simply including ugly women in porn can change the nature of humans who appreciate and more prefer beauty? Or do you think that by increasing ugly women in porn, it can intensify the negative feedback towards these ugly women and objectify them even more?
Okay, but then you have to look at it this way, because we are talking about a market that have not been explored because they have been so turned off. A lot of people who are not that good looking get turned off by watching good looking porn because they know they can never become like that. And because other men are watching those kind of porn, they become depressed because they cannot give men that kind of satisfaction. But also when they watch this kind of porn, the women are so flexible, and now they say, oh shit, I have to take up yoga before I can satisfy my men. You see, with the government allowing different form and a spectrum of different groups entering the market, you change this sort of demand, and we believe it will be better and healthier, not only for the discourse, ladies and gentlemen, but also for the market. Finally, let's conclude. Closing government was clear in this debate. We wanted to create more discourse and better sex decision. We supported the opening's claims for education. We argued how education occurs and does not only end in schools, it continues, and we believe that discourse that is necessary to involve more women within this discourse is also important. We also believe that there's a role for government to play to produce pornographic material that reduces objectification of women, that portrays women in a different light, that allows cultural perspectives to have a place within the pornographic market, to saturate the market so that people eventually do not have one conception of sex, one idea of objectification of women, but the discourse that it creates will end up with a healthy and better sex decision for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, especially for the perspective of ugly men who watch porn. For the climax of this debate, I now invite the opposition view.
Yeah. Good afternoon. First of all, I want to give some rebuttal to what comes exactly the man has said before. First of all, he's talking about the demands, talking about the types of movies that are produced by the government, and secondly, talking about exactly the basic need of their human nature. But this kind of thing, both the two kind of questions I want to challenge. First of all, is about the type of the pornography or something else. I think I just wanted to use the economic role or economic theory to analysis this kind of the problem here, because I think there's a demand and supply, as I said before. If there's a demand and supply, the man, as we all know, the man maybe in the market right now, the majority of the buyers of their pornography, maybe the men. And still, if the government produce this kind of thing, he needs to gain that kind of thing, which is called profits. If he wants to gain that kind of profits, he needs that kind of thing, and definitely he will gradually produce that kind of movie. So I don't think there's any difference between the government and the right now the independent companies of the whole. So I think this kind of thing can never solve the problem, and even be worse, because the government can send a signal to the society that this kind of thing is good. Everybody can taste. Or anything. If you, maybe I was a man, I have ugly a wife. I look at maybe the kind of movies. I want to have a very beautiful lady, but in the reality, I can never have this kind of a girls. So what about me? So I think this kind of thing can result to a more serious problem. And I think this the most important thing for a man to know now is to accept the basic principle. Is accept the truth of their maybe the reality. It's not to looking at this kind of movies to influence your schedule or your basic the routine of your life. That's my first argument. And the second argument, note now. The second argument, I think, is everything about the sexual education. You take in China, I think the upper house of the government has said before. He taking China and Japan as example, because as we all know, the market now is filled with the Japanese movies. But I think this kind of thing is basically the origin of this kind of problem is due to the government's role, because we don't think the government has fulfilled his role in sexual education. We think the Chinese people, the Chinese government are too protective and too traditional and haven't accepted maybe the kind of theory. And I think the biggest problem, it's the biggest problem for the government to accept that kind of theory and to promote that kind of basic principles that sexual is right. And I think this is kind of, if we told the children or the people about the true opinion or true feeling about the sexual, I think I think this kind of thing can reduce the bias of their maybe for the bad movies can reduce. After my rebut, I just wanted to move to my own argumentation. My own argumentation today. First of all, I think as the uphouses before, but I wanted to give a more analysis here, because the first point I just want to argue is about the role of the government, because I think the role of the government to produce that kind of thing which is good, which is in reality people can accept the basic principle to accept the facts to accept the facts. I think the government if promotes that kind of spirit, it will definitely result to let people to imagine that kind of thing he can never touch. I think this kind of thing, the government do this is just to send that kind of signal to let people to think over about the fake imagination. That's my first argument. And my second argument is everything about the child's problem. As we all know, the child's problem. If the government or states accept the basic principle and to produce that kind of thing, it will definitely make the child to accept the basic principle that sexual behavior is right at this stage. But I don't think taking China as example, if the child has a sexual experience earlier at their stage, I think they will definitely influence his major, his maybe the school work or something else. So I don't think it's beneficial for the little child. I think this kind of child can never touch or accept that kind of a principle or theory produced by the government. That's my second argument. But for the third argument, I just want to talking about. I just want to use a word that is called social disorder. I think this kind of thing is very important. Like the government produce that kind of movies, to produce that kind of theory, to let other people believe the sexual, to match a person's need or desire for the sexual endlessly. I think this kind of thing is really bad, because we all know that everything has their ending. We don't need to satisfy a kind of a person's sexual desire every time. So I think the basic need is to face the reality, to love your wife, to love your husband, not to love that kind of the fake imagination of the movies. And that's my third argumentation. But my the last argumentation is everything about the crime. I think the crime is very important when a person watches that kind of movie. I think it's definitely the result to the desire for the sex. maybe in the daily life he will set the kind of basic principle. Maybe he can reduce, not reduce, can maybe to increase the rate of the crime, like the rate or something else like that. So I think this kind of thing is that kind of thing we can never accept. Yes.
Don't you think that if the woman is not as flexible or not as pretty, she would feel less depressed watching a government production that does not demand so much of her, and that will allow her husband to love her more?
I don't think this kind of thing is really the real thing in the reality. I think it's just a kind of thing which is called imagination. Because your husband imagine another kind of beautiful woman, then he can remove that kind of imagination to you that can make you much more happy. I don't think it's the real, because in reality we all know that kind of thing. We need to face the reality. We need to accept that kind of no. Just set that kind of basic principle. So I think today's class can be divided into three parts. First part is everything about the person's needs. As the government side, I think the government role is to never match the person's needs endlessly. For the second part, I think it's the government's role. Government's role is to send something very correct or something very good to the public. For the third part, I was just wanted to talking about exactly sexual education. I think the government should have the kind of a public education, not like this, to produce that kind of movie. So thank you so much to produce.
Excellent, thank you very much. Invited debaters.